Okay, we're live. Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Radley Griffin from Tampa, Florida, with Griffin Concierge Medical, and Dr. Mihaela Telecan from Melbourne Beach, Florida, with healingwithfoods.org, author of the soon-to-be New York Times bestseller, Making Peace with Fat.
Yes, I want that to happen.
So welcome to our chat today. And today we wanted to really kind of it's the end of the year, and wanted to share some of these success stories, and really as an inspiration for people out there for the new year. I think the new year is a time for rebirth, focus, goals. I think it's a wonderful thing. It gives us motivation to have a reset for the year. So we wanted to share a few success stories, and my ability to, as being a physician, to be able to track lab results. I love lab results. I think they're absolutely wonderful, and I love it even more when I can show a patient that they are changing their insides, basically, by the way they're eating, by the way they're living. Because sometimes the scale doesn't show the whole picture, and sometimes people, they feel better, but when you start throwing in that medical angle of how they're healing themselves on the inside, truly healing themselves with foods, and you can actually see that from the blood work, I think that's just awesome. So I love blood work. It's one of my favorite things to check, and especially when we're seeing progress. And it helps me troubleshoot when we're not making the progress that we want. It helps me fine tune and hone what we're doing for our particular patients. So I know not everyone has the access to a practitioner, and Mihaela, you'll talk about some of our patients who are clients who don't have the access to lab work in particular, but that's okay. We can still have great success without necessarily looking at blood work or needing to look at blood work, really. So, so shall we get started?
Absolutely.
Okay, so here's my case. I talked to this gentleman prior to the show. I said, I am so proud of you for the year. I need to tell your story. Please let me. I won't tell your name or anything like that, but just a little backstory on this gentleman. So came in 47 years old. He's now 48. He is a military person. I'm so thankful for him as a person and what he's done for us, for our country, and a lot of our, if not all of our military, they're warriors. They come back to our country and after serving, and gosh, sometimes they just, they get out of shape and don't really know what to do. There may not be a lot of resources or guidance for them. And I was just so honored to be a part of this gentleman's life. So we met last year in November of 16, and we started, and he came to me, 5'11" and a half. He weighed at 236.1 pounds. I said, well, what was your fighting weight, so to speak? And he said, he's normally 180s, 190s. So he'd put on quite a bit of weight since honorable discharge. And so we checked some labs. So we started out. So I did lab work in the following increments. I checked labs in November of 16, again in January of 17, a few months later, and then again more recently in November of 17. So a full year later, almost to the day, okay? And so what we did for this gentleman is we said the diet we recommend, low carb, high fat. I put him on a carbohydrate diet of less than 20 grams per day. And he was...
Question, less than 20 grams total carbs or net carbs?
Net carbs per day.
Net carbs,
yeah.
Okay.
Net carbs per day. And I would say on average he was probably around that, maybe a little bit higher, over the year. And so
Was
just
he reluctant? Sorry, I'm going to ask that.
Yeah, you'd be my audience. So no, he was not reluctant. He was ready, and he was having some other symptoms too. He was having issues of low back pain, chronic low back pain, joint pains, the wear and tear of the body over the years. Irritable bowel was a big thing for him. Really just had no vim and vigor for life, and was really I would say in a rut perhaps. And so you know, a lot of times, I guess in my old practice, I would have said, well, gosh, let's send you to the orthopedist to check out your back. Let's send you to the GI doctor to make sure you don't have some sort of disease. And I don't do that anymore. I said, I need you to try this first. And then if we don't have success, then we can explore visiting our specialist for something we can't handle. But I try to have everybody create, if they will, a blank canvas to work with, and we have to take away, or we have to reverse the inflammatory underlying inflammation if we're to truly see the lay of the land. So basically,
we want our clients or patients to change the default, because currently the default is, you know, eat 6 to 9 servings of whole grains and this, right? So the idea is here to shift the mindset to what normal is or default, and have everybody try a different default.
Right.
And see if that has an impact, how far we get by changing what we eat and how we live our life. And then we go to the next step according to the results we get.
Absolutely. And you can really, it provides clarity, I think. And then you can really focus on issues that aren't really affected by diet. You know, they do exist. There are some things that diet just generally doesn't affect. And so it's kind of nice when you can be on point with a diet, and then I think it makes the other issues that come up a little bit more manageable in my experience. So, but so when I show the labs, I'm going to show 3 values. I'm going to show the November of 16, January of 17, and November of 17. So you're going to see 3 values here. And these are in standard US units. So I apologize for those who are not using these units. We can convert those if need be. So the first we looked at is cholesterol, which we know is irrelevant based on our prior discussion total, but I want to include it here.
Yeah.
170, then went up to 175, and then 146. And we say, okay. And then
it's expected. In the beginning, it's expected for the cholesterol to actually even rise.
Absolutely.
And we can explain that if our listeners will want to know more about that.
Absolutely. And then we also see that the LDL, same thing. We see the LDL rose a little bit, 110 to 123. But after a full year, you see that it's settled in nicely at 97. That's very interesting.
By the book. And
this is one that I'm really proud of. 36 of the HDL. Initial decrease to 34, which I think there was a little discouragement there. And then to come a year later at 41, that seems like small potatoes, but for me, that is amazing. I love that 41 there.
Just lifestyle.
That's right.
No medication, right?
Oh, absolutely. And this is also, I didn't put a smiley face, but I really like the triglycerides went from 162. And you can see after only a few months, it only came down to around a 123, still not where he needed to be. And then here we come a year later at 51, and that's just phenomenal. I mean, just really, really super. So I love
and at 3 months, you could see, although the cholesterol was going up, which again is expected, that comes with changes in the diet and weight loss, because we mobilize the cholesterol that's stored in fat cells, and it gets just more floating around. Yes. But you could see that the real true marker that matters, which is triglycerides, trending down. So that's already, it's like, wow, we are going in the right direction. Absolutely. And then 51 is like mind-blowing. I know. I love it.
That's so great. I was so pleased to see that. This is kind of neat to see the C-reactive protein. So this is very common. and to go from 1.0, which is borderline high, not really. It's a pretty standard value. Again, this is our highly sensitive C-reactive protein, which shows intravascular inflammation. These are very low levels, but again, you see our endpoint. So initially we had a 1.0, mildly, you know, it's in the very, very mild elevation. No one would really be too upset about that. And it went up to 1.2, and there's several studies out there that talk about low carb, high fat, or Atkins diet even, talking about how the HSCRP increases on these diets. Well, they do initially, but then ultimately, the problem with the studies, you can't look at the values for only 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Yeah. We have to look at the long-term effect, because there is a reset period, there is a full metabolic correction that we're not accounting for at 6 weeks. A person can't, they can't obtain, most people do not obtain full metabolic correction in 6 weeks. No. So you start seeing here a year later that 0.5, and I think this is a good segue to the back pain issue. The back pain went away in about a month, and the irritable bowel went away right away in this patient. Wow. And so it's just an immediate effect from an immune perspective, inflammatory perspective. So I thought that was kind of great.
So I think it's worth saying this, that most studies that are published on the effects of a low carbohydrate diet or high fat diet, 2 caveats at least. One, they're too short.
Correct.
And second, it's usually not really low carb, like what therapeutic range we are talking about here, ketogenic really, where we are in less than 50 net carbs. So anywhere 20, 30 or less, right? Nor is high enough fat. It's usually higher protein, moderate carb, and slightly higher fat, but not high. So they really don't have the formula we use in clinical practice in those studies, and they are usually of short duration. So it catches people in that transition phase where the body is still adapting to shifting metabolism from being a primarily carb burner to a primarily fat burner. So I think it's important because there's so much confusion in the nutrition world. You know, new studies come out and people are confused completely, and rightfully so. And this is important for you when you read the study or you hear something in the news, to always think what was the formula that was used, as well as what's the duration of the study.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then that's why this is so important for us to talk about real life examples that I see every day in my practice from a lab work perspective. I think it's important for me to share this.
You're going to publish soon all your clinical cases.
I'm getting where I have enough.
We need that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then looking at next, insulin. This is our culprit. Started the fasting of 15. Made great progress right away in January of 17 to 8. But gosh, look at him a year later, down to 5, which is pretty great. I think, Mihaela, I think you think so too.
Fabulous.
The A1C, this is interesting, but not unexpected. So this is why A1C is a good marker to look at, but it just doesn't tell the whole picture at all. So 5.4 to 5.4. And yeah, you really see the fruits of his labor a year later at 5.1, which is just tremendous. This is interesting. I expect this one to go down over the years too, 96 to 97 to 98.
This is fasting?
And these are all fasting. And even a year later, still in that 98 zone. But he is not yet to his final metabolic corrective state. And so I do expect this to go down. So next year, we'll show a year later and see how he's doing.
I'm raising my hand like I'm in school.
Go ahead.
Is he doing any intermittent fasting with his low carb or just low carb?
No, he is doing intermittent fasting. We implemented that probably in the spring or so.
So we're about 6 months into his low carb.
Yeah, about 6 months.
And that came naturally?
Well, it came up when we were talking about, this particular person, does some traveling, has the, different conferences, seminars, things like that. And I know many of you have been to a conference or seminar, and gosh, the food's just not really what we would have. And you're in an airport or an airplane, and there's nothing good to eat there, and people kind of feel obligated. So that sparked the discussion of, if you're given the choice of food that is not on the diet, and eating nothing, you eat nothing. I mean, that's really our philosophy, especially when traveling. Traveling and that was a nice segue into the fasting concept of, okay, we have a frequent traveler, air traveler. Let's start talking about and introducing fasting into your world, and that's what we did.
Or busy executives that have to be in long meetings and they can't have lunch at set times. So it comes in so handy, it's so natural.
Absolutely.
It's just like the modern hunting man that we have long meetings and hectic schedule. It's like our, ancestral man that didn't have a set schedule every day. So it's really the same idea in just different environment. We just have to open our minds to this possibility that it's okay to sleep on it.
Too often
dinner and water in between.
Yeah, it's really great. We too often, I mean, I know you've heard over the years where your clients or patients will come in and they'll say, gosh, I had to remind myself to eat. And I say, no, you don't have to remind yourself to eat. Your body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. The reminder is not, it's your, we'll call it a social reminder that we've been told we have to eat 3 times a day, 6 times a day. And that is the challenge to overcome, is that societal norm, not what's natural. What's natural is your body doesn't need any fuel, therefore you're not hungry. So that's a big challenge sometimes.
It is, and at the end I'm going to announce something, because I'm planning to put a fasting group together for January. So I want to invite people to join the fasting journey.
That's great. I want to
do a 4-day water fast.
Oh, 4 day. That is so cool. I was going to try to get in there.
I never done. I only did like a 24-hour at least, and usually has fat coffee in it. So I really want to experiment with that.
It'll be me, you, and Di Henderson from Australia. We'll all do.
We'll do it, and I invite people to join us. The challenge with me is because I have to cook and prepare food, and I forget and I taste something. So I have to prepare the food ahead of time, or I don't know, just to remind myself. That's one thing. If I do it with a group, it's going to be more engagement, so it will be easier, more committed. We'll have a low carb chat in between, and we'll see how we all do. how sharp we are.
So let's move on. The HOMA IR. I love this test. The IR insulin resistance score started out at 3.5, went down right away 1.9, and then settling in nicely at 1.3. In spite of that rising or slightly elevated glucose, we want that glucose down, settling down a little bit further over time. But the insulin is so important here. That coming down to 5 really drove down the score, of course. And this is interesting. This is the vitamin D. I wanted to show this. So started out at 29, which we would say is deficient. In January, and immediately I put him on a vitamin D3 5000, a pretty robust dose, and went up to 48 in January. And I thought that's pretty good. But here's what's interesting. As he's become fat adaptive over the year, his D has gone up to 80 on the same 5000. Repeat that?
With no supplementation?
No, with the 5000 supplementation. So I actually a day, yes.
Okay.
So I actually backed down from 5,000 down to 2,000.
Okay.
But it's just really interesting as he enhanced his absorption over the year. It was neat to see that, and you can actually see we supplement for a reason, and we don't need to we need to adjust our supplementation, especially with vitamin D. Yeah. So that was a necessary adjustment for him. Homocysteine is another, which tells us about our vitamin absorption, specifically B. Initially, I did not supplement with him with an oral medication. I actually saw his homocysteine go up. And then we supplemented him with a methylcobalamin and a methylfolate, and we see he's come down nicely to 9. And we may see how he does off of that now that he's potentially absorbing his vitamins and minerals a little bit better. So that was neat.
Interesting that it went up.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see that. But it was really nice to see it come down, which is great. So this is kind of the cool one, and there's a caveat here to the testosterone. This was a particular case where very low on the testosterone, obvious metabolic syndrome as indicated by the low HDL cholesterol, the elevated triglycerides, the elevated insulin resistance score, and we see the testosterone very low at 219. And gosh, when you're in this state, I call it the hibernation state, you just feel just like you can barely stay awake. And to see his levels come up nicely, 785, 886, his body is awakened.
No supplementation here?
So on this particular case, we had give him a light supplementation with a bioidentical, not a very robust dose though. And as you can tell by the levels, they're not incredible. They're not super therapeutic. They're at really a nice level, and we'll probably won't need that moving forward, which is great to see.
Usually, and is he back to exercising? Because he was active, right, in the military.
Yeah, he just started doing that a little bit. I'm encouraging him to do a little bit more, and I'll probably back down on the testosterone once he really starts his resistance training again. Right. But yeah, that's really a goal for 18 is to really enhance. But I would say 2017 was not a very exercised year for this particular patient. It was a bit of a restart with that, but that's a goal for 18. And then let's
focus on food in terms of changes.
So we see, gosh, well, the weight went from 236, went down to 230 in January. And sometimes people feel like, gosh, I only lost 6 pounds, in 2 months. And then you go down to 211 and you say, well, gosh, all that work for just, what is that? 25 pounds of weight. Is that right? Is my math correct there?
I hope so.
So, yeah, I think so. So 25 pounds, a lot of people say.
Don't make fun of me. I can't calculate anything in my head.
Yeah. So that, 25 pounds, yes?
36 minus 211. 25. You are good at math.
Thank you. But we see his muscle mass, though, went from 87 to 90.4 and 93.3. And obviously the supplementation with testosterone is creating that muscle bulk, which is fine. But it's nice to see that, especially when arguably, you throw in the concept of fasting, the body doesn't go into, quote, shutdown mode. It goes into active mode, and it goes into fueling mode, fueling ourselves with our fat stores. And so we see the muscle mass rise. I would argue that if someone was taking testosterone and not engaging in the low carbohydrate lifestyle, not exercising, we wouldn't see that muscle gain like that.
That would be an interesting study.
And then, yes, fat mass. This is so cool. So fat mass, this is tiny writing. I wish it was bigger. Wow. The fat mass started out at 83.1 pounds of fat. So this particular person had 87 pounds of muscle and 83 pounds of fat. So it was a 1-to-1 ratio of muscle to fat. In January, lost 11 pounds of fat, and here we are a year later, a whopping, gosh, what is it?
35, can you see that?
35.3 pounds of fat. That is amazing. And so, gosh, so if you just subtracted the fat from his core weight, he would be 201 pounds. Or right at 200 pounds. I would much rather he be 211 with more muscle than 201 with less muscle.
And plus, we have to take into account even bone density.
Absolutely.
Some score improved. Because when we look at the muscle mass, it's actually fat-free muscle mass, which includes the bone and other tissues aside from fat, blood and all that. So I think the mineral density, if you were to scan him, you could see improvement in that too.
Yeah, that's a great.
Because of absorption. Now he absorbs more nutrients.
Yes. Body fat, percent body fat started out at 35.2. Our gosh, we want them, you know, ideally as low as you know, with the most muscle and the least percent body fat as we can. You know, there's some folks out there that say, gosh, you need to have a little bit of body fat. Well, I'm of the opinion that if we allow our body to burn fat and allow for ourselves to correct, our body will settle in nicely. We won't go down to 0% body fat unless we are, you know, doing a fitness competition, and that actually takes pretty significant effort for people to actually do that. But from a natural perspective, listening to your body and following these principles, the body will settle in nicely at the percent we're supposed to be. So he went from 35 to 31 and now down to a 22.7, which is awesome. But we're not done yet, of course. We still have a way.
I'm looking at the body fat guidelines for American Council on Exercise for male, acceptable 18 to 24, fitness 14 to 17. So would be interesting if we have this conversation next year. So 1 year after the last measurement, if he starts exercising,
yes,
how much fat he's going to drop, and he's going to shift even more body composition with more muscle gain. So he is still in the acceptable range according to this guideline for male.
Yes.
And this is in my book. You guys have lots of resources in my book. If you didn't buy it, please make sure you get it, page 166.
Okay, great. And then last metric I have here is the visceral fat level. This is really great. So it went down from 17. This isn't in pounds.
Pounds?
It's not in pounds. It's called a level. It's a calculation.
Oh, okay.
That our body impedance scale does. And so the lowest it will go is 1. So people say, how low should I go? I say go to 1 if you can. That's how low we would want it.
Wow, that's normal? 1 is normal? No, or that gets into essential fat?
Yeah, we want to be below 10. And so
below 10, but what is like optimal? I don't have, my scale doesn't calculate this.
I don't know that I can say there's an optimal value. So for instance, if I have a patient with metabolic syndrome, and maybe they don't have an abundance of fat tissue, maybe they don't have an abundance of muscle mass. So I like correction. So if I have a patient who is in his 150s, 160s, but has significant heart disease, and his visceral fat is 5 and 6, and for that particular patient, that's actually very good. But for
him may not.
For him, maybe it's not very good. So it's a very independent value, I think. And so,
but so the scale doesn't tell you. If you drop below this number, you actually hitting essential fat, because we have the essential visceral fat that we need. If we get into that burning essential visceral fat, then we are one step before cachex and that.
Yes.
So it doesn't have that. It doesn't
break it down like that. No, this is just a calculation. The best fat, probably the best thing to look at visceral fat would either be a CT scan or a bone density test, which will also look at visceral fat. If we ask the machine to do so,
right.
But we're not yet using CT scan yet in that capacity.
And they have that pod or something.
Yeah, the body pod is interesting. I don't know that the body pod is measuring how it measures visceral fat. I know it works with air displacement, and I'd have to check on whether or not.
But those are much more expensive methods. What you have, it's a scale, right?
It's a scale. It's I'm sorry.
Tanita.
Ours is a in-body scale. And SECA, all SECA, they also make a very nice body composition scale. But these, you can buy them, you know, the body composition scales on Amazon.
On Amazon, right.
Pretty accurate. I think they're pretty accurate.
I use Tanita,
Okay.
but I have an old model since basically 2007, when I finished my studies and I started my private business. Before I worked for a hospital, that's where I still have the same scale. So it doesn't give me visceral fat. It gives me percentages. And I still use that. But this is better, obviously.
Yeah, the scales are great. I think, you know, from an accuracy perspective, I mean, there's immersion is probably the most accurate. Probably air displacement with a body pod is probably second, and maybe the body impedance is third. But I you know, they do have limitations from a quote accuracy perspective, but we're not athletes.
But we are looking at the trend, right?
The trends are what's important. Is, you know, if it's 5 percentage points off, but you're trending downward in that 5 percentage, you know, that it's the neat thing is the results are reproducible. So
yeah,
that's what's nice. So it doesn't tell you you're 18% body fat one day and 10 the next day. No, it's a nice trend that you see. So
yes. No, I agree.
So that's my case. It's such a wonderful, I'm so proud of this individual, and it just makes me
feel like clapping for him.
Yes, he did a wonderful job, but we're not done yet. Now our challenge is continuing to get down to where we want to be ultimately, and then the ultimate challenge is maintenance. How do we maintain this forever, right?
Well, I think after a year, it pretty much becomes more of a norm, the new normal, the new default lifestyle, and hopefully the person will have enough external motivating factors that helps him continue, because there's plenty of external demotivating factors, because you're pretty much going against the grain until this becomes the normal. It's always, you know, that chance of being looked upon like this is the diet. At one point you're going to go off. But if you look at it that this is the normal way of eating for humans, then you don't think that at one point you go off of it.
No, you're right. I think it's important. I think maybe this particular person and other people who are doing this, maybe there's a challenge that you know, or they need to be challenged and encouraged to teach others. You and I, we can only reach so many people,
right.
But as we teach and we show and we lead by example. Again, the best sermon is living by example. So if this person, and I know he's doing it now, is teaching others, telling others, I think that's the challenge. You're not only maintaining, but teaching others, hey, yeah, you can do it too, and just being an example to, gosh, I mean, the entire population is arguably off course here. So we have to, you know, start somewhere, and our challenge is to continue it, because if we don't continue, well, you know, so there's a lot of pressure on us, I guess.
Yeah, you know, but it's part of, you know, it's making your winning environment. So if you see that works for you, by example, not by trying to preach to people, because nobody likes to be told what to do or not to do, right? People have to come to the conclusion, but just by you being an example and a role model, you will influence and you will attract other people to try doing what you're doing, and so they feel it for themselves. So eventually, you know, that ripple effect, and that's how, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I see like the big Titanic turning.
Right, that's right. Well, gosh,
the iceberg.
That's right. Well, we've really had a nice time discussing this. We are at, gosh, how many minutes are we in here?
I think it's good to end here. I think this was an awesome story. Perhaps we can do this at least once a month to present one success story. So our audience, I'm not in a room speaking here, our listeners and viewers can, you know, hear stories of real people that are not you or I, which are, you know, living, breathing this every day. So it seems like it comes so much easier for us, right?
Right.
So then they'll be discouraged, like, if I tell my story, they'll be like, yeah, but you studied this, you work with this, of course, for you it's easy. And of course, yeah, to some degree that's true. But then when you hear of just people walking down the street and go seeing a primary care doctor and embracing a radical, I'm putting air quotes because I don't think it's radical, but anyway, radical dietary change, and they have this kind of result, and they go off drugs, which you didn't even mention, but I imagine he probably went off certain medication, and
actually, yes,
not have to go on other medication to control symptoms. I think this is pretty mind-blowing and inspiring, and hopefully more people would want to say, oh, I want to pick up this book or fasting book or Dr. Mercola's book. I mean, there's so many books out there, so many resources. They can come and watch our weekly shows and just flood yourself with information, build up your belief that this is a way worth investigating and trying, and reach out for support if you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, one of the neat things I want to accomplish in 2018 is compiling more data. We have some very exciting preliminary data on patients we saw this improvement in numbers, but what about those patients who actually have heart disease, have plaque, soft plaque? We're showing reversal, not a little bit of reversal, up to 20% reduction in soft plaque in patients. And we are just so excited about that because we truly have a comparison, a 3D comparison, a year later minimum right now, of patients who have implemented low carb universally. Some patients we've used medication, and the other we did not. Mm-hmm. And to see that type of reduction is just mind-blowing. It's just so wonderful. So a real goal of mine and some colleagues here in Tampa for the new year is compiling this data to show that we can reverse disease with diet, with help of targeted medication, probably.
With high fat.
Yes.
Not Dr. Ornish, right? Because he's promoting ultra low fat to reverse cardiovascular disease. So
absolutely.
It's the opposite.
The idea. So that's really exciting stuff. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh, I hope you do that. You are more organized. I'm all over the place. I have, each client has files, but I don't have I should have a master file where I put all the data, so then I can.
No, I absolutely need help. I can't do it. I can do a lot of the talking and the preaching, but I need somebody else. File the data.
Hire an assistant to organize data, because that's important. Absolutely, I agree with you. I just wanted to say before we end, we won't have another one until first week of January. Is that or second week of January?
Let me look.
So next week for sure not, which is the 27th. Are we starting on January 3rd, or we push it to January, let's see, 10th?
I have you on my calendar for the 3rd.
So we keep it the 3rd, that's good. Now I want to, so this came up to me just, I don't know, I listened to another interview with Dr. Mercola, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of the doctor that wrote the book, The Plant Paradox, about lectins and autoimmunity. Something with G, I can't think of, but anyway, and they talked about lectins, but then they talked about fasting again.
Okay.
And I just feel like it's so much power in fasting, and it's so underutilized. People don't understand and we had our video on fasting got over, I don't know, maybe by now has 2K views. I don't know, a lot. It was probably the most viewed video. So yesterday I said to myself, I want to put together, first of all, personally, I'm selfish like that. I wanted to do a 4-day water fast, and I feel like I need the support. That's what I tell my clients. You need to find your environment, supportive environment, make a public declaration so you are accountable to. So I'm doing here live coaching to myself and to everybody else. So I want to try in January a 4-day water fast. To do a 4-day water fast, you it's best if you've been doing low carb for a while and at least for 1 month intermittent fasting. It's going to be so much easier. I have no doubts about it. Otherwise, headache, migraines, upset stomach, all sorts of things would be part of the symptoms. So to reduce to a minimum or none that, I invite people, if they want, to join now an intermittent fasting plan, which can be done during the holidays, very easy, especially if they've been doing low carb. If they haven't been doing low carb, they can start. I have a plan, like a 7-day to come off sugar and a 7-day to jumpstart intermittent fasting. Like what you do each day. So at the end of 7 days, you are already shrinking the window of time in which you eat, right? So to prepare the body. And then about maybe second week of January, for those that are ready for a water fast, we do a 4-day water fast and we report. It's going to be a close community where I give the support and the guidance. And of course, if you're on any medications, that you have to check with your doctors because we don't want to.
Oh, absolutely. Well, what do we? I am all in. I will commit to doing this with you, and I will.
Cool.
I will even get on my our body composition scale, and we'll do a before and after.
Okay, and I'll do my scale. It doesn't have so many details, but still has the details for muscle because we want to see.
Yeah, let's see
muscle and all that. So if anybody watching our video live or recorded and are interested in joining this, I guess the best way would be to, I'm trying to think how we do the logistics, to PM me or to join the book group. I have a private Facebook group for the book, which is free. And then I'll have more information in there to how we're going to do that. And
yeah, that sounds great.
Start the intermittent fasting and all that.
Okay. No, that's exciting.
And then we'll decide, probably we'll announce our next, on the 3rd, we announce when we start the 4-day. Most likely it's going to be the 2nd week of January.
Okay. Very good.
And we'll decide the day we start, the day we end, and we'll do it all together.
I know.
And even if it's just you and I, we'll do it.
Really
I want the experience.
No, that's going to be great. Well, this has been really great, and happy holidays to you and your family, and enjoy, and to all of our viewers out there, those who are listening to us, thank you so much for tuning in these past several months. We've really enjoyed these. I've learned so much, and I hope everybody else out there is learning a little bit as well. So we look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Yes, and I wish everybody health above everything else. That's the biggest asset we all have. Health and abundance in the new year.
Absolutely.
And clarity and courage and support.
That's right. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.